Welcome to Communicate Now, where we talk about everything related to effective communication skills, everything from sales to negotiation, public speaking, coaching, running your own podcast, and my personal favorite, how to win friends and influence people. It is my vision to teach effective communication skills that will make a positive impact on your professional and personal lives. Today, I have a special guest, Mr. Camron Sayyah, an influence coach, digital creator, incredible conversationalist, sleight of hand magician as well, which is impressive, by the way. You always have a
Thank
deck
you.
of cards in your hand.
Always.
And that's right. And an insightful coach and teacher. Welcome to the podcast, Cameron. How are you doing?
Thank you. Happy to be here and doing great. Looking forward to this conversation.
Awesome. Awesome. So I'm just going to start off with a few questions because you call yourself an influence coach. Now, what exactly is an influence coach? Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I think putting it very simply, my definition of influence, just according to me, is your ability to move people where they want to go in as little time as possible. Even outside of the realm of sales and sales tactics, I think there's a whole layer there's a whole layer underneath that, and that's what I focus on, kind of the base of that pyramid. So I don't know if that was the 5-year-old explanation, but that's the simplest explanation of what I do.
Yeah, and I think a simple explanation and concise explanation is even better for the people watching this so they get an idea of what that is. And would you consider yourself a bit of an influencer as well? Because you are a digital creator, so I suppose you could call that influence as well.
Sure, to some extent. I mean, I am putting content out there on my social media. I'm building my brand and my network. So in a way, that is influence in and of itself. So yeah, that I guess that does fall under the bucket of influencer.
Yeah, because I spoke with a university professor in sociology and communication, and he said that communication is so wide. It's not just the way you speak, it's also paralinguistics, your body language, the way you present yourself, and
Yeah.
it's also our image. So our image on social media is a form of communication, and we want it to be congruent with how we are as people.
Oh yeah,
Now,
absolutely.
we spoke before briefly, and we talked about a lot of things that you're really interested in, which I find fascinating. Now, you had said to me before that you're fascinated with human behavior.
Yes.
And you also said that everyone wears a mask.
Yes.
Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone wears a mask, meaning my definition of that is we all want the world to see us a specific way. And so this comes down to our mannerisms, the way we behave, the way we present ourselves on social media, the clothes that we wear, the cool backgrounds that we have. Every little micro nuance in every behavior that we exhibit is designed subconsciously for the world and for people around us to see us a certain way. And so that, for lack of a better word, I just call this wearing a mask, because we all have this face that we put on for the world, and it's typically a little bit different than the face that we wear in private when no one's around. So that's something that's always fascinated me, and that's something that kind of sparked my interest in the journey of human behavior.
That's great. And I remember we spoke before about it's not just about your how you present yourselves to people, but it's how you are off camera.
Yeah,
So, if I have a certain personality type, when I'm, for example, on my podcast, do I actually behave like that, in my friends in daily life? And
yeah,
I like to think that the skill sets that I am learning right now, especially when it comes to communication related to leadership, I like to walk the walk.
yeah.
So I like to, because I believe that everyone has leadership qualities within themselves and they can communicate them to people. So people that are introverted and don't believe that they can make a difference in people's lives, I don't believe it's true. I think that they have a lot to offer, and we can talk about that further. But
Yeah.
in regards to wearing a mask, because people just have different personality types.
Yeah.
An entire plethora of personality tests that have come out in the past, 50 plus years. How should we change the way we communicate when we're interacting with different personality types?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. I'm sure there's an endless list of things that you can do in different ways you interact, but this is just the way Cameron does it. So when I'm interacting with another human being, the first question that I ask myself silently in my head is, what does this person that I'm talking to, what does this person want the world to see them as? How do they want to be viewed by others? A lot of people, for example, want to be viewed as intelligent. I call this the smart mask. We put on this mask, we may use really big fancy words. We may talk about our extensive list of education that we've had, books and courses that we've gone through. So if that's the mask that someone's wearing, I just want to feed people what they're looking for. I want to make my job in this conversation is to make that person feel smart. There's other people who wear what I call the strong or the powerful mask. They want to show the world that they are strong and powerful. So what do I do when I'm interacting with them? I want to make them feel what they're trying to be seen as. And I think that's one of the quickest gateways to connect with another human being, is to just suspend your own judgment, suspend your own ego, and just give people what they're looking for. And I think the results, just in my experience, the results from that, just that alone, have been incredible with making genuine connections with other human beings.
Yeah, that's great. And I'm a big fan of Dale Carnegie and his book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. And one of the principles, that he has is show genuine interest in other people.
Yeah.
you know and you're fascinated with human behavior, so a question I want to ask you is that there are some people that really don't have particularly an interest in other people. I mean, not talking about complete narcissists, right? Okay,
Yeah.
have an interest in themselves, but there are some people, and I would even, what as a communication coach, what I want to teach is, how can we develop an interest in people if we find that we don't have it? How can we develop that? How have you developed that yourself?
Yeah, that's a really good question. For me, I had a mentor, one of my earlier mentors when I was first learning this stuff, told me, Cameron, when you're speaking with other people, forget about yourself, forget about your interests, forget about trying to look interesting to other people, and pretend like you are getting a master's degree in the person that you're talking to. So attend the conversation like you are attending a college course on that person. Learn everything you can about them, ask questions, dive deep. And if you act like you have this master's degree mindset in that person, number one, you'll learn a lot of things about the person you're talking to. Number two, the connection that you can build with another human being just by showing that you are genuinely interested in them is incredible and almost beyond words. So I think for lack of a more complicated explanation, just pretend like you're getting a master's degree in the other person.
I love that. I love how you explained that. And, for beginners, in when they're trying to change their communication style, one thing that I like to teach them is just very simple questions that they can ask them that will get the other person to open up and
Yeah.
get them talking, and they can learn about them. That's how that rapport is created, because you show appreciation to them, that you actually want to discover who they are. And that will make a person remember you for years.
Oh
Even
yeah.
if you never speak to them again, you could even just meet them once and they will only have good things to say about you. And as a
Oh yeah.
podcaster, I love it because I try to ask great questions. And then, more people want to come on the podcast because they find that everyone just has a discipline, something that they've worked on for so long, that they want to receive recognition for, because they have a lot to offer.
Yeah,
And so,
absolutely.
yeah, and that's something, like you said, if they want to appear very intelligent and say, large words and fancy words, you cater to that, I think, kind of
Yeah,
way.
absolutely.
Yeah, great. Now, when we spoke before, you brought up something interesting, and you said this is actually your own term. You called it cause blindness.
Yes.
Now, you said as a society, we seek out symptoms while ignoring causes.
Yes.
So, an important thing most people seek out, okay, an important thing in effective communication is confidence. And you
Yes.
said this, so we know what the symptoms of a confident person are, but what are the causes?
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on that a bit?
Absolutely. I'm going to elaborate on that with an analogy. But before I elaborate on that, I just want to say, I want to go on record saying that that term, cause blindness, I am not smart enough to create that. That actually came from one of my mentors by the name of Chase Hughes. So
Oh,
for
okay,
anybody listening, please look up Chase. He has wonderful stuff on deep level psychology.
great.
But essentially, what that means to me, what the way I interpret cause blindness is if you have in one hand an orange and then you have in the other hand a branch from an oak tree, these are two very different things.
Mm.
What a lot of people do is they take this orange and they use some duct tape and they tape it to the oak branch, and then they have what looks like an orange tree.
Yeah,
But what this is we're just faking the symptoms of an orange tree, right? The cause would be taking a seed, planting it in the ground, growing an orange tree, and the symptom, the effect would be the orange growing from the tree. That was probably a terrible analogy, but how that transfers to confidence is we hear a lot of people talk about confidence in terms of behaviors that you exhibit, like sit
yeah,
up straight, use a stern voice, make eye contact, do X, Y, and Z when you're talking with another person to appear confident. But those things are just symptoms of being a naturally confident person. So
mhm,
the way I define that in terms of a cause, I think being a naturally confident person is having a really good reputation and relationship with yourself, having a generalized expectation of positive outcomes. So just telling yourself that, hey, I don't know how, but I just know everything is going to work out okay. And having a lack of reservation in your actions and in your speech. So no hesitation and not being afraid to take leadership and take charge. And I think with those causes, the symptoms of having the good posture and the way you speak and the way you connect with others, those just become a natural byproduct of having that inner relationship, that inner trait of confidence, if that makes sense.
it does make sense. And someone said to me the other day, if you want to become a good communicator, you could read 100 books, but you would actually learn more and your behaviors would change more if you would only hang around people that were great communicators because it rubs off on you. So,
Yeah.
of course, you may, stand up straight, have better posture. They may teach you, how to speak and enunciate. However, it's still their behaviors and their mindset is rubbing off on you. And when
Yeah.
you speak, Cameron, I noticed that you sound like a personal development and mindset coach at the same time. And that's an impressive analogy that you made. It did resonate with me because we can say take a public speaking course and we
Right.
can learn all of those things. However, sometimes people love affirmations. And it's like
Sure.
I told you before about the magician. Back in the 1930s, I believe it was a magician. And before he went on stage, he always said to himself over and over again, I love my audience. I love my audience. I love
Yeah.
my audience. And it would boost his charisma and put a
Yeah.
smile on his face. And he would just be incredibly entertaining. And I see that as a cause.
Yeah.
And then the symptom is his charisma on
Yeah.
stage. So he actually is congruent with it. So what I got out of that, it's about congruency between your behaviors and how you see yourself. Would that be kind of accurate to what would that be accurate?
Absolutely. 100%. And I think a big puzzle piece there is something that you touched on a minute ago, which is silent leadership, the off-camera leadership. That's
Yes.
where that congruence comes in, because I know that if I have nobody looking at me, if the cameras are not on, nobody's around, and I behave in a way that is contradictory to the way that I behave in front of people, part of that will start to shine through in my behavior when people are around. And I won't claim to know what part of the brain does this, but there is a part of the brain that will always remind you when you're in a conversation that you are not the person that you're pretending to be.
Yeah.
And it will always show up and it will always give a gut feeling to the other person. So that's why the things that you do off camera If you can minimize the gap between who you are off camera and who you are on camera, I think the more congruent you'll come across, the more clear your intentions will be broadcast, and the more that charisma, that confidence, all those external things will become just a natural byproduct of that.
I would even go so far as to give an example here that if someone came on, because I'm going to be coaching a lot of people that have social anxiety. And when they come on stage and start doing public speaking, I would actually say to them, it's actually better sometimes to make mistakes
Yeah,
because it makes you seem more human.
yeah,
And then the audience will actually resonate with you because they might be up there thinking, oh, I have so much anxiety, right? But
yeah,
if you're an incredible performer, then your audience might begin to think, well, I'm not as good as them. And they even might start to feel like, how could I possibly learn what they're doing? I just don't have it in me.
yeah,
And so it's even better to make mistakes because you just appear more human and it's more congruent, right?
100%.
Yeah, great. And now, when I just want to ask you, there are a lot of people that want to change the way that they communicate. And they believe that they have to be incredibly charismatic, incredibly confident, and an incredible speaker just to win friends and influence people. And I would say that it's not true at all.
Yeah,
I would say that there are introverts out there that are incredible with meeting new people and having a lot of influence and making impact on their lives.
yeah,
So how would you say, for someone out there that wants to communicate better, but doesn't believe that they're charismatic enough to do it? Are there
yeah,
ways of doing it without being incredibly charismatic, incredibly, I would say maybe even attention seeking or interesting?
yeah. Absolutely. I think whatever you lack in social skill, whatever you lack in confidence, in charisma, you make up for by being overly interested in the other person. That will always fill in those conversational and those behavioral gaps that you have that you'll naturally develop over time with enough repetitions of putting yourself out there. So if you're talking with another person, be interested and quit focusing on being interesting. And this goes back to the master's degree thing. Just focus on getting a master's degree in the other person. And the more that you can make a conversation about the other person, the more successful you'll be, and the more they will perceive you as conversational, charismatic, and interesting, even though you may not have your social skills leveled up and your charisma leveled up all the way. So I think it all goes back to that simplistic advice that we've all heard before, but not a lot of us follow, is to just be interested versus interesting.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I would like I find it um I find it very interesting that if I'm speaking with someone and I'm showing interest in them, they feel appreciated. And now something that good communicators and salesmen understand is the law of reciprocity, which means that
Yeah,
if someone has a gesture of kindness to you, you feel the need to repay that kindness to them. And so you create a
yeah,
win-win situation. When
yeah,
I am showing interest in someone, they feel appreciated.
yeah.
And when they feel appreciated, they feel the need to reciprocate. So it creates a great relationship. They only have good things to say about you. They'll introduce you to great people. Now you get to have great people around you. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The doors that will open up for you just by showing genuine interest in other people. If you just did that and nothing else, just show that you're interested in people, you'll create relationships for life. You'll open up doors that you never even knew were there. And so many great things can happen as a byproduct of that. It just sets off this domino effect that goes on for a long time.
Great, great. Now, we spoke about presentability, the way you show up, how we present ourselves on and off camera. Sometimes I have my questions here and they don't necessarily go in order.
Yeah.
We jump all over the place.
Yeah.
Um, so I would say, how do you, aside from just asking questions or even just the type of questions you ask, how do you get people to open up to you? Because it's very easy and enjoyable to talk to you. How do you get people to open up to you?
Yeah. There's a couple things we can talk principles, and then we can even boil it down to specific techniques that I use. But I think to keep it very concise, the number one thing that I focus on is you can't give something that you don't have. So if I want somebody to be more open with me in a conversation, it's going to be really hard to do if I'm not first open myself. So if openness is the thing that I want, the thing that will give another person that silent social permission slip to be open is if I'm first open myself. One way that I do this, if you rewind the tape a few minutes, we talked about admitting a fault and showing that we're not perfect. I think that one of the number one things that bonds people together is our imperfections. It's the fact that we're not perfect. So sometimes, just to kind of stick the wedge in to get my foot in the door, I'll say something like, I am so sorry, Stephen. Sometimes I get a little nervous on these podcasts when the recording is on. Sometimes I freeze up and I don't know what to say, or I'll admit some kind of a fault and I'll be genuine about it. Sometimes that is absolutely very true. Now, what that does in your eyes, you see me as a human. You don't see me as this perfect thing, and I don't want to be seen as perfect. I just want to be seen as a human with flaws and imperfections, just like everybody else. So I think fault admission is one of the number one ways to give people permission to open up. Another thing is I'll compliment people on being open. If they start to kind of deviate, if somebody is a little bit closed off, and the second they start to deviate from that and just start to be a little bit more open, I'll compliment them on that. And I'll just say, Stephen, I really appreciate talking to you, because there's so many closed off people out there, but I really appreciate how open you are. Have you always been this way? Because I had anxiety growing up. Now, what that will allow you to do
That
is
is hard to believe, but please go ahead.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I actually did struggle to come out of my shell. But if I say something like that with a little compliment, you might say something like, oh, yeah, I really appreciate that. And then you'll start opening up more and more throughout the conversation. So there's all these little nuances, but I think the overarching principle is be open first, and then you can transfer that to the other person.
Yeah, I think that vulnerability is a powerful tool to create a connection.
Yeah.
And when you are the person that is first willing to be vulnerable and open up, the other person will begin to feel comfortable, because they're thinking, well, they took the first move, so now it's okay if I come in too.
Yeah.
And, something interesting, because I used to be a construction worker, and construction worker, the communication skills they have often aren't very good.
Yeah.
They often yell at, because they have a very stressful job. So they often
Sure.
yell at each other. They have very crass jokes. They make fun of each other all day.
Yeah.
And so they don't really connect, except, and I've seen a lot of them have dealt with very difficult issues growing up in childhood or as a teenager.
Sure.
When they talk about their traumas with each other, I noticed a bond that was created that was like a camaraderie that you would see for life.
Wow.
And when they spoke about that, all of a sudden they could be complete enemies.
Wow.
All of a sudden they just became brothers.
Wow.
And so that it just goes to show how much vulnerability can play a part in creating a connection. I think a lot of people might think that vulnerability is weakness. I don't believe that it's weakness.
Not at all.
Yeah. And how do you feel about that when people say that they think that vulnerability is weakness? How do you feel about that? I mean, obviously you have different opinions.
Of course. I think vulnerability is one of if you think about some of the most inspiring, some of the most powerful leaders are the ones who are not afraid to be vulnerable. I think it's not a sign of weakness. It's one of the ultimate signs of courage, bravery, and strength, because it takes a lot to put yourself out there and be vulnerable, despite these images that society tries to mold you into. And I think there's a lot of social norms that have to do with that vulnerability being seen as a weakness. And it kind of goes back to, there's another silly analogy. It's kind of like if you think about someone like Superman, everybody loves Superman. But if Superman did not have kryptonite, if kryptonite did not exist and Superman had no weaknesses, then he would get boring really, really fast.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's the vulnerability, it's the weakness that makes us like him. That's what makes us bond with each other. So yeah, I think vulnerability is a huge sign of strength.
Now, I want to bring up a topic which I find very interesting and very intriguing. And we never
Yeah.
spoke about this before, but networking
Yeah.
in professional, with other professionals. It can be such a beautiful experience.
Oh
And
yeah.
I think the greatest network that had ever been in the land of Middle Earth was the Fellowship of the Ring with Frodo, with Frodo,
Yes.
Frodo, Samwise Gamgee,
Yeah.
which is the best friend that always encourages him
Oh yeah.
and very humble, with Gandalf, the wise mentor,
Yeah.
who even is cryptic with some of his words and even seems a bit goofy sometimes,
Yeah.
but just filled with incredible wisdom and really cares.
Yeah.
We'll take a look at the dwarf. I can't remember the dwarf's name.
Oh man, it's been years.
Yeah, it's been a long time. Maybe
Yeah.
people watching this, some of them, they don't even know. But anyways, if I'll just say the caricature types is Gandalf is the wizard, and he is like the mentor.
Yeah.
And everyone needs that in their journey, in their professional life and their personal life,
Yeah.
whether you're paying them as a coach or not. And then everyone needs a Samwise Gamgee.
Yeah.
And the Samwise Gamgee is the one that encourages you, no matter how many times you fail, they will always tell you, I know that you can do it. I know that you can do it, because they do know
Yeah.
that they can do it. Someone
Yeah.
that believes in you. Now, what recommendation would you have for people that are looking for those characters in their lives? The mentor, in other words, the Gandalf, the wizard, and then also the Samwise Gamgee, which is the friend that always encourages you no matter what, which I believe everyone needs to succeed. How can you
Absolutely.
recommend to someone for going out and finding those in their
Yeah.
network?
Yeah. Beautiful question. I would say two things. There's two things that I would do, and this is literally just coming off the top of my head here.
Yeah.
So number one, have clear intentions when you're putting yourself out there, when you're networking with people. Set crystal clear intentions that you are out there to find these specific people to add to your network. So my intention when I am networking with people, my intention is to find Samwise. My intention is to find a Gandalf.
Yeah.
And I might have to network with several people to be able to find those people, who, however they may appear in my life. But I think clear intentions. And the number two is be those people, be those characters for other people.
Yes.
Be the
Yes.
best friend, be the mentor, embody the different roles and wear the different hats. We talked about hats. So wear the different hats for other people when the situation calls for it. So if you can give that to other people and you have clear intentions, then it's going to be a lot more likely that you receive those in the forms of other people inside your network.
That's beautiful, because, like I said before, the behaviors of the people around us rub off on us.
Yeah.
And if we have those people around us, we will start to get those qualities naturally, even though we don't realize it.
Yeah.
We'll begin to say things that are so incredibly filled with wisdom. They might be word for word from what our mentor tells us,
Yeah.
but it's okay, because they're passing their legacy on to us, and we can be
Sure.
inspirational to other people.
Yeah.
Just like how you talked about cause blindness, and the fellow, taught that to you.
Yeah.
Right? Now you get to pass that on to other people. I think it's great, man. We talked about so many things,
We did.
but before we wrap up, I want to know, do you have any topics that you want to bring up yourself? Do you have any questions for me? We can switch it so that I'm the one being interviewed now a little bit. Or do you
Yeah.
have any
Yeah.
topics that you want to bring up yourself before we go?
I think we covered a lot of ground, but if we're gonna switch roles here, I would love to hear about your journey. And I know we went into it a little bit last time we spoke, but if you can just kind of talk about what sparked that transition from construction to this remote high ticket selling space, to you starting a podcast, like what, and then where do you see yourself? What's on the horizon for Stephen? If you could just walk through that.
That's great. I love how we're doing this. I'm going to keep it short, because this
Sure.
but this podcast is supposed to be about you.
Sure.
But
Sure.
it's connected, and I feel that we are interconnected in a way.
Yeah.
You see how fast we build a connection
Oh
because of
yeah.
the way we communicate. It's great. I was in construction, and I realized that I could work more hours to make more money, but I couldn't really have an impact on people. I wanted to
Mm.
inspire people. I
Yeah.
wanted to make people better. And
Yeah.
you can't really do that there. And I thought if I switch to a career where my performance, my skill sets, and my efforts make me more money, and
Yeah.
also at the same time almost create a legacy for me, because that's what
Yeah.
I want in my life.
For
And I can
sure.
teach and inspire other people, and I will see, and as a communication coach, I can teach someone simple techniques that within a 3-month period, their life will be in so different. They will meet their Gandalf. They will meet
Yeah.
their Samwise Gamgee. They will
Yeah.
be the Gandalf and Samwise Gamgee, the mentor and the friend to other people.
Yeah.
And, there's leadership skills in every single one of us. A lot of people don't realize it,
Mm.
right? But even though we don't need to be in a position of leadership
Mm.
in order to be, we don't need to have the name of being some type of leader. We don't need to be called the boss in order to lead people.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of people may think that leadership is about delegating and it's
Mm.
about giving orders so that people respect you and fear you a little bit. I don't believe so at all. And I would love people to know how leadership, this is just an example of what I want to teach you and the impact I want to leave, that everyone can be a leader. And so
Yeah.
to sum it up, I just want to inspire, coach people, and make a difference in people's lives, because that makes a difference in my life.
Yeah.
And I think that you feel the same way as a coach as well. And do you want to talk a little bit uh, about why you got into coaching? So I guess
Yeah.
I would just say the same question back to you.
Yeah, yeah, I appreciate that. I think you and I have a lot more in common than we previously thought, because the reason why I got into coaching, I didn't see myself originally as a coach. I think I resonate with what you said about everybody has leadership qualities in them. It's just a matter of, number one, being aware of it, and number two, actually unlocking it. And it's going to look like something different and unique for everybody. And for me, it took me years to be able to realize that I had those things in me. And once I realized I had those things, those qualities, I made a permanent, silent decision to myself that this was the legacy that I was going to leave behind. And, I didn't necessarily see exactly what the path looked like. I just knew what the destination was. And I'm just focused on putting one foot in front of the other, and in benefiting and impacting as many people as possible along the way. So that was that was a little vague, but for the listeners, I was in the restaurant industry. I was a bartender slash server. I stumbled into the remote high ticket selling space by accident, and it was one of the happiest accidents I've ever had in my life. 3.5, almost 4 years later, I'm here, I'm coaching people, and I'm having a blast doing it. And I still feel like, with all that I've accomplished, I'm only scratching the surface, and I have so much
Yes.
more ahead of me in the future. So I think you and I kind of resonate on that same plane. And I
Yeah.
think we're both here for impact and for legacy. So that's exactly what I'm here for. That's a little bit about my 30,000-foot view of my journey.
Yeah. Yeah. And after you say that, I'll say, I think a measure of success is not how much, money a person makes. Like, for example, at a person's funeral, or what you call celebration of life,
Yeah.
uh, with, you can tell their success by how many people show up,
Yeah.
because you know that person made a positive impact on so many people's lives. They appreciate it.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, yeah.
Now, before we wrap up, is there anything that you would like to say to people that are trying to work on their communication skills, but have a lot of doubts of whether they can even do it, whether they're even capable of going out, winning friends and influencing people, whether they will even have people believe in them? They're just very nervous. They have a lot of social anxiety. Do you
Yeah.
have any advice for those people before we wrap up?
Yes, I do. All of this stuff, if I were to sum up everything in one word, if I could only give one word, a one word piece of advice to people, that one word would be permission. And what I mean by that is, give yourself permission to behave the way that you want to behave. You do not need anyone else's confirmation. You do not need anything external to behave confidently. You have everything you need inside, and you have all the power to give yourself permission to start behaving any way you want to behave. So I think wherever you want to end up, wherever your destination is, the first step is always internal assumed permission. So start by giving yourself permission, and that's going to be a very healthy first step.
Great. Thank you so much, Cameron, for coming on this podcast. As my
Yeah.
second pod, I think this was excellent.
Yeah, same here.
I
Likewise.
really enjoyed it. I think a lot of people watching are going to get a lot out of it. They're going to really enjoy it. So thank you for coming on. And we'll wrap this up right now.
Awesome.
All
Good
right.
stuff.
So great to see you again. We'll talk soon.
Excellent.
All right. See ya.